The Oracle of Luna is a podcast with me, Bridget Engels, as your host. Here we have conversations with real live, present-day goddesses who are actively and courageously doing their magical work in the world. Each episode is a bewitching journey with relevant discussions on topics such as Wiccan pagan spirituality, writing, culture, magical practices, art, ritual, and the craft in its many forms.
Merry meet. Welcome to another episode of the Oracle of Luna podcast. I'm Bridget Engels, your host, and today I'm honored to chat with Reverend Angie Buchanan. Angie is a founder and the spiritual director of Earth Traditions Church and of Gaia's Womb, an interfaith spirituality group. She has served on the Board of Trustees for the Parliament of World Religions. Angie is a certified death midwife and provides a program for compassionate end-of-life care and ecologically sensitive funerals. Welcome, Angie.
Hi, Bridget. Thanks so much for having me on today, this beautiful fall day.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm at the end of the weekend. The leaves are turning. It's sunny and beautiful, and I'm just happy to be here.
Good. As the wheel turns towards Samhain, Halloween, and Day of the Dead, I am really interested in hearing your perspectives on sacred death and dying, and I have a whole list of questions for you. So let's get rolling.
All right.
So first off, how did your journey, or how did your spiritual path with the goddess begin?
That's a really interesting question, and I've been I've contemplated that for a while because I get asked that a lot. I was born into a family of pagans. My upbringing did not include the Abrahamic faiths. My mother raised 10 children alone, so the family was organically matriarchal. I went to, at this point, I want to do a general disclaimer about the limitations of language. The English language falls short of words to describe things in ways that are not presupposed to be understood in social context. So with that in mind, I would say that I was raised with the experience and belief that Earth is a living, sentient being, that essence, or also known as spirit, soul, energy, vibration, which is not necessarily singular, runs through everything, animating beings, sharing and experiencing the world through the filter of whatever it's inhabiting. And it seemed that I always understood the importance of the divine feminine. These are all terms that are fairly new in our lexicon these days. But Mother Nature has been a term that's been around a long time, and we referred to her a lot in my upbringing as the force that's always giving birth to itself, and best expressed by the birthing process of the females of species. So she expresses emotion through elements, the cycles of nature, and I think we all begin on this foundation of knowing.
Did you go to college and study women's studies or spirituality, or did you go to a religious university?
Interestingly enough, my background is in law enforcement. And because I wasn't raised in, one of the normal quote unquote systems, is that religion became intriguing to me. I was fascinated by it, and so I did go to study and to both independently and academically embrace a training in religion.
Uh-huh. So when did you start becoming active in the pagan community?
I first became aware of the contemporary pagan movement in the late 80s, early 90s, which was kind of when it was really starting to be more visible. Um, and it looked a little bit different than what I was used to, but I kind of entered it when I was given a copy of Margot Adler's Drawing Down the Moon, which is the way a lot of contemporary pagans have sort of entered that forum. And Margot became a very, very close friend over the years up until her death in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess that was the sort of entry into contemporary paganism
Uh-huh.
for me.
Did you join a circle or a coven or start your own community, or how did that happen?
I had certain people that I would come together with, um, but I moved a bit during that time, and I moved to Illinois, at which point I became familiar with Circle Sanctuary. I then met
Was
people
Selena
with,
Fox?
yes,
Mm-hmm.
and then met people with Covenant of the Goddess, and I actually um, became involved with the Parliament of the World's Religions and met more different communities through that.
Yeah. So I understand you are on the Board of Trustees or were, but I also wanted to touch base on what is the Earth Traditions Church and what is Gaia's Womb?
Okay, so you've got three different things there.
Yeah.
Uh, Gaia's Womb is an organization that I started in 1998, along with a few other women who eventually left. One because mostly because she wanted to present and not produce, but I really loved being in the production as end of things. And so I started Gaia's Womb. It was a women's spirituality group. It was essentially interfaith, but it had a divine feminine foundation.
Hmm.
And I in 2024, that was when I decided I'm not going to do it anymore. So
Oh,
26 years
oh
of
wow.
putting together women's spirituality retreats, and it was wonderful. And um, Earth Traditions came out of a need from my community. It was started in 2008 when I was still fairly mobile and robust, but I noticed that our population was aging and
Yeah.
they were hungry to be able to come together and still have some comforts. And so I created that to do Wheel of the Year events, but also to provide a week-long family retreat that was in a place that had an infrastructure that was climate controlled so that people didn't have to sleep on the ground or be in a tent, or lots of our folks were on medications that disallowed them to be out in the heat or the sun. And
Right.
so we've just kind of gone on from there, and uh, it is still in um, use. I guess we still have events.
Uh-huh. And where is that located?
Uh, I am in Wisconsin right now, but we have
Oh,
events generally in Illinois and Wisconsin.
okay. All right. Yeah, I've been to Madison, Wisconsin, and I drove out to Circle Sanctuary a couple times when I was out there briefly. But well, that's great. Currently the director, the spiritual director. So how how does that weave into your death midwifery, I guess? And how did you, I guess I'm transitioning to another question here. How did you become a death midwife? And can you tell us a little bit about your journey there?
Sure. We were doing a ministry training program through Earth Traditions, and It all sort of intermingled when death midwifery became part of that ministry training, that we realized the need for it to be open to everyone. And so while we still do offer a version of it in our ministry training, we have also opened it up to everyone. I have a long history with death. I worked in the prison system during a time when AIDS had just gotten its name, and I worked in law enforcement where death doesn't always happen on clean white sheets. And I found that I was good there. I was I was comfortable there. And as I said earlier, because of my non-traditional upbringing, I was intrigued by the religions of the world. So I studied them. Um, I was ordained. I was serving my community already, visiting the sick, vigiling with the dying, officiating funerals. And I met Nora Cedarwind Young, who is my teacher, in 2000 when I was asked to photograph her wedding at an event that I was attending in Wisconsin. She was my first introduction to the term death midwife and the associated work. So she lived in the Pacific Northwest near Seattle. She was one of the foremothers of the death positive movement. She was a founder of the National Home Funeral Alliance, and I was intrigued with her work. Over the years, I sponsored her, including having her as a presenter at Gaia's Womb.
And what was her name again? Can you repeat her name? Sorry.
Her name is Nora Cedarwind Young.
Okay. Thank you.
And so I had her present at Gaia's Womb, and then she did a number of death midwife workshops with my community in the Illinois and Wisconsin area. And in 2014, that's quite some time that I'd known her, she called to let me know that she had been given 10 days to live. And she asked me to come to Seattle, where she expressed that she wanted me to continue her work.
Wow, powerful. So at that point you became a death midwife, or you became certified?
I had already been certified as a death midwife and was already doing the work. At
Okay.
that point, I became certified to teach.
Right. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about your perspectives on death and dying? I personally believe it's a holy right, uh, something that's very sacred. We don't really often talk about it much in this society. We just kind of brush it aside, sweep it under the rug, get it over with. But how do you, as a death midwife, what are some of your perspectives on death?
I think they're very similar to your own, Bridget. I view it as our final rite of passage, and I think that it is very much overlooked. We come into the world, and um, birth is important. Rites of passage for coming of age are important. Weddings, retirement parties, and then we act like we're not going to die. We live in a death denying culture, and I feel like there's so much I could say about that, not just about death itself, but dying. When we come into the world, we're catered to. Our needs are met. The lights are lowered, the blankets are soft, our voices are lowered, and we our every need is met. And when we die, we most often die alone or surrounded by strangers or hooked up to tubes. And I feel like there's something fundamentally wrong about that. And
Yeah.
so while I can't speak to how death is viewed by the death midwife in general, mostly because every approach to that is individual, I can echo what you said, that most of us see this work as sacred, as a calling, and as our much neglected final rite of passage, deserving of as much dignity and thoughtful planning as any other significant rite of passage.
Yes. So what are some non-traditional approaches, or maybe pagan approaches to death and dying that you believe in? Are some practices that are that you do as a death midwife?
Well, my non-traditional approaches would be, first of all, a consideration of eco-friendly body disposition options. Um, Also, keeping the body at home for a while, if possible, dying at home, if possible, allowing the family to bathe, bless the body, to be with the body um, after immediately after death. I've so many times I've seen families where they're all sitting around this hospital bed and their beloved is dead, and as soon as they get the declaration that their beloved is dead, they get up and rush from the room. And I feel like death has been taken from us by industry. Um, we as a death midwife, my job is to sort of flow the we're the water that flows between the rocks of the medical profession and the funeral industry and academia. Um, my job as a death midwife is to reclaim family directed choice at end of life. And the way I do that is to encourage people to spend time with their beloved dead, even talking to them, playing music, sitting quietly, rather than having the body whisked off, um, having unnecessary processes happen to it, being given 4 hour increments to grieve. Um, I think that this is a wound in our Western culture that is not going to be healed until we get past our terrible, terrible death anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah, and grieving is a whole, oh, that's a very deep process and very subjective. It's very different for each individual too. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there are many different kinds of grief that people don't necessarily understand. Um, you know, we have anticipatory grief, which is the grief before the person actually dies, and that is experienced by the person dying as well as their family and caregivers, where it's the little deaths of grieving, loss of intimacy and loss of financial security and loss of dreams that happen before the actual death occurs. And then there's the actual death from loss. Um, and then there's also disenfranchised death, which is death that is not supported by society, like suicide or drug overdose or the death of a pet, that
right,
society doesn't allow us the tools to grieve
right.
properly. And a lot of that is industry driven too, because what we
Yeah,
end up with is, okay, your beloved just died. You've got 3 days to get over it and be back to work.
right. These short leave of absences that don't cover it. I mean, grief takes a long time and can take a long time.
Yeah, it certainly can. And it is different for everyone. And it can not necessarily be identified um, other than by the person that's experiencing it. And I,
Yeah.
I feel like Megan Devine, who wrote It's Okay That You're Not Okay,
Hmm.
has a quote in that book that I love. And it said, "Grief is the howling at the center. Grief is visceral and real. It is the howling at the center. It is love in its most wild form." And I don't think we allow nearly enough room for that.
Yeah, and we don't really have forums to grieve. I mean, I guess there's circles or group talk circles, I guess, therapy circles maybe around grief and dying, but there's no real, like, maybe I haven't seen them, but like grief rituals, like
Right.
something, that really acts as a catalyst or can be really deep and, on a spiritual level. I don't, yeah,
I feel like we don't do mourning as
mourning.
the way that we used to, which,
Right.
grief is sort of the internal manifestation and mourning is the external. And we used to have black armbands and fabric over mirrors and all sorts of traditions that different people used to indicate that they were mourning, and the rest of society would give them some breathing room for that. We used to have professional mourners. Europe had professional mourners. Other cultures also do. And there's a beautiful statue called Les Pleurants, the Weeper, which these heavily veiled people would show up, and they would begin a form of mourning that is now kind of, it stands alone, but it can also fit into the keening piece. And that is something that my Earth Traditions community has done for many years at Samhain. Is we do an induction into the death threshold and allow people to keen and grieve, and we have some people that will begin the keening, and that allows the space, and it charges the energy for others who are truly grieving to express that grief in absolute privacy, because it's pitch black, and just being able to be there as a community to hold each other in our grief.
That's really powerful. I'd like to learn more about that. I've been to rituals, Samhain rituals, where there's the naming of the dead and their name of their dead that passed that year, or it could be a pet and they're named, and their piece of paper thrown into the bonfire, and there's bells, and that's kind of acts as a catharsis as well. But I like your keening ritual. That sounds really important and powerful and necessary.
It is. And it's not like everybody gets to stop and deal with this. So we just sort of allow people to put it on the back burner until Samhain, and then the gate can open and that person can have a moment to actually devote to this. Oftentimes when someone dies, it's all hectic on a practical level.
Stressful, hectic, get the details done.
Right. Lots of people milling around. Yeah, it's tough. And especially if you're using a funeral home, because then you've got to adhere to someone else's schedule.
Right. After someone dies, as a death midwife, do you provide emotional or practical support for their families of the deceased, or?
Yes, actually, it's kind of funny because one of the things that I teach in my class is that in order for you to be able to do this work, it's kind of a joke. I say you have to have ESP, which means that we approach death midwifery from an emotional, spiritual, and practical place. And so there is the emotional piece of the actual sadness of the grieving. There's the spiritual piece, and when I say spiritual, I don't mean religious, because everyone dies, no matter what they believe, or no matter what they believe happens after that. So we need to be able to work with anyone of any belief or no belief, and sharing that sacred space. And then the practical piece is helping organize the family and task family and friends with things like food and cleanup and house cleaning and pet care and child care and all of those sorts of things that times when a family might just need a point and shoot person.
Yes. Right. Yeah, there's a lot of details when somebody passes away. What about sacred death goddesses or archetypes that you connect with? Do you have any sacred death goddesses, or?
Well, there are a few that I have looked into. I don't work with named goddesses. I work with more like archetype. So Sana Morte, Hecate, Persephone. A lot of people don't think of Persephone as a death goddess, but these are all archetypes that I might invoke in my work if I'm working with a pagan. And I think that these types of energies can be very comforting in times of grief. And I think that they can certainly inform the death threshold.
Mm-hmm. And also, like, if somebody they want to create their own burial and their own memorial, are they able to discuss that with you, and create their unique funeral and burial?
Absolutely. In fact, we so encourage that. And everything from what do you want certain music or readings? We, on a practical aspect, we try to make sure that their final documents are in order before they go. But I've had people that have expressed a desire to participate in the decorating of their own cremation container.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
yeah, so a lot of times in cremation, there's a cardboard box that's used, and you can get that from wherever your whatever business you're using for your final disposition. And we've called the community together to just draw and do art and write notes and paint and make that a beautiful piece of grief art.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the most powerful memorials I've been to have been out in nature or at the ocean, mountains where ashes were scattered, and it was very at one with nature and the spirits of the earth.
We
But yeah,
also we also have for those that are not using a reduction for body disposition, who want a natural burial, who are maybe being buried on their own property or in a natural cemetery.
yeah,
I have a group that does shrouds for their community. So they come together and they sit three and three with their knees touching, and then the piece of muslin is between them, and they sing and they embroider it as they're putting this together for whomever is going to use it.
That's really interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of that tradition before. Dying in the burial part, memorial services could be a lot more creative and a lot more collaborative and unique for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it breaks my heart when I hear somebody say, "Oh, I don't care what happens to me after I'm dead. Let somebody else figure it out. It won't matter to me." And yet, my thought is that here you are asking your beloveds to guess what it is that you would like to have happen in a time where they are most vulnerable in their grief.
Yeah.
Whereas if you could just contribute to this conversation, you could make your own death experience a gift to them that
Yeah.
is going to help them move within their grief differently than
Right.
if they had all of this anxiety around it. And for me, I don't use the word closure because I don't believe it exists, but you can have resolution on different pieces of death. And um, you never, significant deaths, you don't ever get over. It's like an amputation.
Right.
You're never going to grow that piece back.
What is your thought? What are your thoughts on what happens after one dies? I mean, that's an important question. I mean, not important, but it's a curious question. I think everybody wonders a little
Sure. Of course. and no one has an answer. That's why
Yeah,
they call it a mystery. Um,
right.
but I can only speak for myself. Um, but I do believe that we go on. I have had a near-death experience. I've been with many, many people when they died. Some of what I've heard um, makes me smile uh, and just kind of nod my head. I can tell you about two of them offhand that I just jotted down here a minute ago. Um, One darling old woman. Um, I came into the room. She said, "There you are. They said I couldn't go until you got here." And I said, "Who? Who said? Who are they?" And she said,
Yeah.
"All of them." I said, "Okay. Well, I'm here. Do you need to go right now?" And she said, "No, I don't need to go right now." I said, "Well, she died like just a few days later." I've seen them. I've seen people talk to other people in the room that I can't see
Mm,
who have already died.
like
Um,
ancestors.
yes, or friends.
Yeah.
And and I guess those friends could be ancestors too, but it everybody for me, everybody that is significant in my life is ancestor with a capital A. Most people might confine that to being a blood relation, but um, but yeah, friends or family members that have died, parents, pets have
Yeah.
have come into the room. Um, and then there's the one shocker that I had, which was the woman who I'm sitting beside the bed, and she said, "Here I go. I hate this part." And then she was gone. And I, I was like, "Wait, how many times have you done this?" So I don't think that, every death is different. And
Yeah.
I don't think that there's any hard and fast for
Yeah.
what happens afterward. I think science is coming closer and closer to a sort of um, explanation for some things, but I don't think there's any hard and fast on the mystery of death.
Think it strikes anxiety and fear because of that, because we don't know what's going to happen.
It's true, and there is a Irvin Yalom is a Stanford University existential psychiatrist who said death anxiety is the mother of all religions. I think
Mm,
that's really profound.
yeah.
And seeing as we live in a death denying culture where even our language has changed to accommodate our death denial. Um, we used to have parlors in our homes. Now we have living rooms. We use uh, code language. Buffy went to the farm. Grandma's sleeping. You know,
Mm, right.
we've hidden death instead of keeping the body at home the way we used to. And what's interesting is that um, it's only been about 100, 125 years that we've had this taken away from us. It's only been 3 generations that we've lost the common lore of death because we don't keep the body at home. We don't bathe. We don't bless. Um, and we've got folks that they've never seen a dead body.
Hmm.
I feel like that is such an ostrich with the head in the sand sort of thing that has done more
Mm,
damage to us
yeah.
than good.
Very clinical and sterile. And
And we've been convinced to let the professionals take care of it. So we've over medicalized it and we've over industrialized it. And it's become an incredibly toxic, unnecessary, and unsustainable industry.
but there are more companies out there providing ecologically sensitive funerals and burial places and ways of disposing the body. And I know there's more options out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, one of the things that I train on is the many different options
Yeah.
that you don't have to be embalmed. Embalming is very toxic. It's on the top 10 known carcinogens, most dangerous carcinogens in the world. And it's formaldehyde
Yeah.
and ethyl alcohol that is causing cancer in our funeral workers. It is completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
There is no state in the United States that says that you legally have to be embalmed, because it's a breach of the First Amendment. And it leaches out of the body through the casket, through the concrete grave liner in sometimes as little as 4 weeks. And
Oh, I
that's in
didn't know
our,
that. I did
yeah,
not know that. Wow.
that's in our soil. And if you're
Ugh.
cremated, if you're embalmed and cremated, it stays in the atmosphere for
Ugh.
250 some odd days, and then it rains down on plants and animals and you. And it is,
What? I
yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah. How about that?
Oh.
And it's
And
not necessary.
they have to use that when like the Neptune Society, they have to use that when they're cremating? I didn't know that. Hmm.
No, that's just embalmed. If it's a cremated body that's been embalmed.
Okay. But
So,
like
and most funeral homes won't allow you to have a public viewing unless the body has been embalmed. It's a
right.
policy. It's
Yeah.
a
Got it.
policy, not a
Yeah.
law.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Oh.
Yeah. So more eco-friendly, green
Yes,
burials
absolutely. Green
that
burial.
are,
Yeah.
yes, green burial. Even that though, our bodies have lots of toxins in them, and they do take up a lot of real estate. So there's water cremation, or uh, resumation, which is reduction of the body via a machine that uses water. It's an eighth the carbon footprint as cremation.
Hmm.
And you can do all the same things with the remains that you can do with cremated remains. There's terramation, which is human composting, and
Hmm.
that's really starting to gain some traction.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that. Hmm.
It's an amazing process that essentially accelerates the composting of human remains into essentially what looks like mulch. And both resumation and terramation, um, they remove toxins from the body. They remove prescription drugs. They remove uh, DNA, RNA, infectious diseases, uh, AIDS. They sterilize.
Yeah, that is interesting. And what kind of, ooh, how would somebody find out about that? Like, I guess just Google terramation.
You could.
Okay.
There's particularly a place called uh, oh my goodness, it just slipped my mind. Um, it's in Washington, in Auburn, Washington, and it's called Return Home is the name of it. Return Home, and
Okay.
I prefer it over any of the other um, vendors out there that are offering this, because I just feel like they're really family oriented, um, transparent, and uh, if it's a child under 16, they don't charge the family.
Mm.
But
Hmm.
the material that you get back there's a lot of volume, and
Mm.
so um, you're going to get a pickup truck load of mulch
Oh,
back, and most people don't
what?
want that.
Yeah.
However,
Why?
you can donate it to reforestation efforts, um,
Interesting.
to just help. Again, it's all about eco-friendly
Yeah,
things that are contributing to the environment rather than taking away from it.
that is fascinating. I did not know that. So you could literally be returned to the earth after that in a safe
Yes,
way that's not toxic to the earth.
right, in a helpful way, in a
Helpful.
helpful way.
Yeah.
Um, and
Wow.
also with terramation and resumation both, you you don't have to remove pacemakers or artificial limbs. These things can be uh, you know knees and hips,
Yeah.
can be recycled. So they can
Yeah.
be removed and recycled. And they're doing a lot of work, interestingly, with recycled pacemakers and animals,
Mm.
um, like dogs. And
Yeah.
also, we can send them to other countries. We're not allowed to reuse pacemakers here, but we do have charity organizations from other countries that will come and take
Hmm.
them.
Wow, this is enlightening. I didn't know that. I mean, there's a lot out there to explore on eco-friendly funerals and burials and memorials. And yeah, you've really opened things up for thought here, Angie.
Well, I'm glad to be able to do that. It's my
Yeah,
hope that
yeah,
more people will be open to talking about it at least. We've
yes.
got so many things that, our older generations are just, they feel like it's their private business. And of course it is. But privacy isn't the same as it was
Hmm.
back in the 40s and 50s. And,
Yeah,
um, we need for people to be talking about their final documents uh, and their plans, their death plan. And
yes.
that's
The
something a death
process.
midwife does, is
Yeah.
death planning.
How do people find out about you? Do you have a website or a blog or?
I do. I have a website. It's very simple. It's deathmidwife.org. And on that, you'll find a lot of information about what a death midwife is, what we do, what we're going to train you to do, um, what to expect, who might want be interested in the training.
Hmm.
And um, I feel like there's just a plethora of information
Yeah,
on
like
that.
you have resource links for people who don't know where to start, or I mean, as far like
Yeah,
if you have a loved one who's ready to pass and you need help and they need help and want to explore options and resources, is this website a good resource for that or?
it has some of that on there. It also has a directory of death midwives by state that
Oh, good. Okay.
people can call and talk with about this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and it gives a list of where our trainings are going to be. We our next training's in Denver, Colorado, December 6th, 7th, and 8th, I think. And we still have some seats available in that. We're currently firming up our 2025 schedule, and that'll publish just as soon as we have the contracts back from the venues. They can sign up for a newsletter there, that'll help you be the first to know about events or changing laws. Um, Things like um, death with dignity, terramation, resumation. These are things that have to be approved by the state,
Yeah.
and the laws in all the states are different. So if we have a new state that is doing terramation now, or death with dignity has passed, we we will put it out in the newsletter there.
How long does it take to become a death midwife, get certified?
My program is 3 days, 3 10-hour days.
Oh,
It's brutal. I've seen so many training programs out there that are like 14 weeks long and they're all online. We do nothing online. You have to be butt in the seat 10 hours a day, 3 days. And and part of the reason for that is that um, it's multifold, actually. Everybody knows how to die. When it comes to the point, the body knows how to die.
yeah.
And we're taking it back um, to the way it used to be. And it used to be that we cared for our dying and our dead in our own homes. And we did that for far longer than the way it's done now. We're reclaiming that set of that
Yeah.
bit of information.
Right.
And
So it's more hands-on for sure.
yeah, it doesn't take months and weeks. we already know how to do it. Our ancestors knew how to do it. And the idea that, it used to just be the funeral industry was upset at us because it felt like we were in their pocket. The medical profession didn't like the idea that we were questioning. And it wasn't us, the death midwives, it was us providing information for our people that we were working with to say, when are we prolonging death, and when are we prolonging life, and when are we prolonging death? And when is it time to say enough?
Right.
There's sanctioned torture for treatment out there. When is it time? When is life compulsory? And that's the big question. And so
big question, big decision. Yeah.
Exactly. And now academia has stepped into the ring. And they're starting to move into a space of, oh, well, you have to have a degree to do this. And that is absolutely insane. I mean, it is.
They want to monetize it somehow.
And to, once again, take it away from marginalized people. We look at indigenous traditions, even across the United States, and they don't need a professional to help them with this. We know how to do it. And a lot of it is fear-based. Oh, a dead body is poisonous, or, you can get sick from handling it, or you need to know what you're doing. Well, you already know what to do. And one of the things is to stop letting people take those things away from you. I have partnered with funeral homes. It has been an amazing experience. They are some wonderful people in that industry, and they and academia and the medical profession should all be options, not mandates.
Profound words. Yeah. Angie, do you have any upcoming events or workshops or projects?
Well, I have the training again in December in Denver and that's with the death midwife. With the Earth Traditions, we have a public winter solstice event that's coming up on December 21st. We also offer psychopomp trainings. It's a series of 3, but those are sold out, and we won't be running them again until fall of 2025.
Are any of these online, or do you have to be in person? Okay.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. They're all in person.
Okay. And that's in Chicago or Wisconsin?
No, Wisconsin. I'm trying to think. Yeah, Wisconsin for both the psychopomp workshop and the psychopomp training is it's the psycho-spirituality of death. I don't do a lot of that psycho-spirituality piece in the death midwife training because it's for anyone. And I don't think that I've trained, I have trained church groups, Christian churches, that sort of thing, hospice groups, and my spirituality has no place in that forum. So what I do offer is, if you would like to pursue my spiritual direction on that, then take the psychopomp training.
Yeah.
And we do have a presence on Facebook. Both Earth Traditions and the Death Midwife have a presence on Facebook. Earth Traditions also has a Facebook page called The Gloaming, and it's a nightly practice of poetry, invocations, and reflections into the threshold.
That's interesting.
Yeah, we started it during the pandemic, and there's like close to 500 different pieces on there now. And
is that part on your website too, a link or information? Because that's very interesting.
Yeah, it could be I think it is on the Earth Traditions website as a reference, but Earth Traditions, The Gloaming, and the gloaming is the twilight hour where things are thinner, and
the veil between the worlds.
Yeah, and it is a practice that I've done all my life. of
Yeah.
taking a moment to speak to the ancestors through the veil. And I developed it during the pandemic into the poetry piece of giving people something to reflect on each night. And then we stopped it for a while. And when the hurricanes, Helena and Milton, hit, I got it started up again.
Yeah. All right. So people can find out more about Earth Traditions at what's the website? earthtraditions.org?
.org, yeah.
Okay.
Earthtraditions.org for the pagan piece of the of my life, and then deathmidwife.org for the teaching that I do in the world.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, this has been really, really enlightening and such an important topic. And I'm so happy that we had a chance to chat, Angie. And thank you for being on the show. And thank you for all your service and compassion and dedication as a death midwife and being part of the Parliament of World Religions and all that you do. So I just really honor what you do and all your work. So thank you again for being on the show.
Well, thanks for the invitation. I could talk about this for a long time, and
Yeah.
I appreciate your kind of guiding the conversation and your interest in both
Yeah,
topics.
absolutely. There's so much to talk about on this topic, and thanks for all the listeners for tuning in. And if you want to learn more about Angie, you could go to our website or and are you on social media like Instagram as well?
I'm on Facebook. I
Okay.
have an Instagram account, but I rarely use it.
Okay. But your Facebook page is it Reverend Angie Buchanan or?
It's just Angie Buchanan. But you're
Okay.
best to just go ahead to the Death Midwife or to Earth Traditions, and you can reach out to me
Okay.
on social media through those.
Okay. Perfect. Well, thanks again, and blessed be. This episode airs, it will be probably the Day of the Dead or shortly after the Day of the Dead, and the time where the veil is thinnest between us and our ancestors, and it's a liminal time, so a lot to ponder here. And anyway, blessed be, and thank you again, Angie. Bye-bye.
Bye.